Hey everyone, David here with a new review for the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. entitled Emancipation. Gee, it's such a fancy word, it sounds an awful lot like registration or accords. Okay, anyways, before I get on with the review, if I talk a little low here and there, it's because it is the middle of the night and I don't want to wake my parents, so I'm going to have to kind of keep this on the download as much as possible. So, we have our first S.H.I.E.L.D. episode post-Civil War, and I remember saying in my last S.H.I.E.L.D. review, as well as my review for Captain America Civil War, saying that I just wasn't very confident that the things that the events that happened in Civil War, which I'm not gonna spoil, because this is a whole separate thing. The events that happened in Civil War weren't really gonna have weren't gonna have any kind of effect on the universe of, or at least the current storyline of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was actually pretty wrong, because right off the bat, this episode starts off with bringing in Talbot, and which is a very sensible move on the writer's part, because if the government is going to enforce this thing called the Sokovia Accords, which is the big thing in Civil War that heroes need to enlist in and register themselves in to be part of the government, which is Tony Stark's side, then obviously the president and the government and the military are going to have to send somebody in to make sure that S.H.I.E.L.D. now under the now in alliance with the ACTU or ATCU, whatever, which is a government which is a division of the government, then obviously someone's going to have to go in there and be like, hey, you guys, just like Ross was with the Avengers. He has to go in there and be like, hey, you guys have been acting a little privately here. It's time to be up in the spotlight and do this at a legitimate level. And so the episode opens up with that, and I thought it was just going to be this one thing, but Talbot stayed out for the majority of the episode, currently reminding that this is a thing that's going to slow the S.H.I.E.L.D. team down and could potentially be a humongous plot point in Season 4 when that comes around later on this year. For now, the main focus is about stopping Hive, which is going to be the main event that's going to take place in the next two episodes that are going to premiere next Tuesday night, back to back, which is going to make up the entire finale. But I do like that they are going to use the things that happen, the events that happen in Civil War, specifically the Sokovia Accords, to plant a seed for what they could bring up as good material for Season 4, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Plus, bringing in Talbot and seeing him and Coulson just clash, it's always great fun to look at. Now, besides that, we did need to go back to the whole storyline with Hive, and I love that they were able to perfectly balance between the stuff with the Sokovia Accords and also the stuff with Hive, where he's trying to make more Inhumans, and he failed at first, but now he somewhat succeeds here after draining a little bit of Daisy's blood, and he forms like these aborted looking type of Inhumans, but it's apparently good enough for him. So this time he says, he's pulling out all the stops, and he says, I'm gonna drain all of Daisy's blood. And it is here where she even kind of has a look in her eyes. She's starting to look like a legitimate drug addict. And so that whole storyline was fine, and the whole stuff with Lincoln was also fine, but it was kind of routine. Both of these were pretty routine because I just didn't see anything that significant happening until the very end, where we got a very, very neat twist that caught me by surprise. That honestly was a very pleasant one, and it did something with Lincoln, which is to make me like him. I was like, that was a good move, because the entire time he's like, I'm gonna break out, I want to be with you, Daisy. I'm like, dude, come on, give me a break. And the entire time I was thinking, I don't care about his escape, because I don't care enough about the character, because again, this is a character that the writers haven't been knowing what to do with, because he keeps getting locked up. Fortunately, they devised a plan, and when that twist came around of him leading off the Quinjet with Lash to face up against Hive, I lost my marbles, my Marvel marbles, because that was a great shining moment and a great way to bring back Lash. That is unfortunately now permanently Lash. Well, somewhat, as we come to know later on in the show. But before I get into that, my only slight nitpick with the direction of these two stories that fused there at the end was that I really, really wish that the fight between Hive and Lash was longer, because I know that his purpose for why he was in this world, which is what Lincoln says he learned from God, I'm blanking on the name now. The sanctuary that him and Jain were at. Oh my God, Anyways, that place. It'll come to me eventually. It's tip of my tongue. Can't get it. But anyways, the thing that he learned there is that every Inhuman, it has some kind of purpose that brings balance to the world. And he believes, along with everybody else, that Lash's purpose is to defeat Hive. And that was a cool moment. That was very reminiscent of what we just saw up in the big screen in Civil War. That was like, oh my God, these two are going to go toe-to-toe. Sadly, the fight itself, I think, was a little too short. And Lash spent most of the time fighting off the abomination type Inhumans, the aliens. I'm trying to think of a perfect word. The Beetlejuice monsters. I don't know. But anyways, he spent a little too much time fighting those guys than he actually did Hive. Hive is just down there with a hole in his chest, like backing up. But I really wish these two clashed a little bit more before Lash is just subsequently and somewhat underwhelmingly taken out by Hellfire, who also we see him shine a little bit when he takes in those God, I can't remember their names either, but that little rebel group that is trying to do what the government is doing, only illegally, where they're like, oh, down with the Inhumans, they're an abomination. I love his little scene there in the alleyway where he lights up that chain. It's like, wow, we got Spider-Man right in Civil War. Maybe it's time to get Ghost Rider right. Fork over those rights, man. Who is it? I think it's Fox too. Fox, let's do it. Do it with Ghost Rider. Do it with Fantastic Four. It's time to admit defeat. Admit defeat. Anyways, that twist ending really made it for me. Besides the fact that we could have had a longer fight between Hive and Lash, it was still very nice to see. And I do think it's just a tad bit early to redeem Daisy by having her be rid of the sway by Lash's little power there. I think it's just a tiny bit early. I think that should have happened maybe in the first episode of the next two that are going to happen next week. But that's just me, because I was under the pretense that Daisy was going to be the big sacrifice that we see up in space, which we have yet to, we have yet to see the connection on how we're going to get there, except there was a slight hint at the end of this episode where Talbot reveals that weapon that Hive was after back in like 5 or so episodes ago, that I was wondering, like, why is he after that? That's actually the weapon that he's going to use to disperse his Inhuman pathogen in order to turn a great portion of the world into Inhumans. And then another thing that we learned that really puts things into questionable areas here is Yo-Yo giving the crucifix to Mac. It's the same crucifix we see up in that spaceship. So does that mean that Mac is the one that's going to go? He's been having an awful lot of screen time, a lot of those significant moments. So does that mean that we're setting up for giving him a proper send-off? Who knows? The only other issue with the episode that I'm trying to overlook, but it is just a tiny bit difficult, is that... Oh, you know what? No, I'm not going to mention it. Because it's, in a way, a slight spoiler for Civil War. It's not a huge one, but it's one. So I'm not going to mention it. I'm just going to say that there's something in watching this episode that I was thinking, why can't they just do that? You know what I mean? That does pertain to some of the things, or at least the end result of Civil War. And for that, I just don't feel like I need to say anything too much, because it's a little bit of a spoiler. And just in case many of you who watch S.H.I.E.L.D. but unfortunately have not been able to catch Civil War just yet, I'm going to be courteous to you. So anyways, this was a very good episode leading up to the penultimate and finale episode next week that we're getting back to back. And it still raises some questions, but an awful lot of good ones and a lot of intrigue with some cool stuff happening with this episode as well. And we got another cool S.H.I.E.L.D. episode overall. So for that, I give Emancipation I'm gonna go with just a solid 8 out of 10. I was kind of going for high 8 out of 10, but that would have only been the case if maybe we gotten a little bit of a better fight between Hive and Lash. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what do you look forward to seeing in the finale, and how do you think the Sokovia Accords are going to play into all this? I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys next week.